Hey guys, tonight we journey thousands of years back, beyond kings and castles, past pyramids and scrolls, to a time when history was barely scratching its head with a stone axe. The air is crisp, with the chill of a prehistoric morning, and you are very much awake in a smoky animal hide hut, surrounded by snoring cave folk and the earthy scent of damp fur. Your bed, a vaguely crunchy pile of reeds, and possibly last night's dinner scraps. Welcome to the Stone Age. There's a thin ribbon of light peeking through the hide flap above. The fire's out. It's cold, and someone has definitely stolen your half of the fur blanket. Outside, the sounds of grumbling voices and low humming echo faintly. Today's mission: survive a full day of mammoth hunting with these ancient folk. Minor problem you have no idea what you're doing. And if you're wondering how hard it is to trap and take down a 12-foot woolly beast with what looks like a sharpened spoon, well, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The hut smells of wood smoke and ambition. Outside, the sky hangs heavy in mist, and the grass crunches with frost. A hunched elder with a face like a walnut pokes her head in and grunts twice, either a good morning or a threat, it's hard to say. You pull on a stiff, scratchy tunic made of stitched together hide, the Stone Age equivalent of pajamas made by someone with no regard for chafing. You duck outside and nearly trip over a child chasing a beetle with a stick. Everyone seems to be in motion, packing up, humming tunelessly, and doing mysterious things with dried grasses and sinew. A grizzled man with wild hair like a badly groomed sheep hands you a stick with a stone lashed to it. "Ook," he says gravely. You nod. This seems like the sort of place where pretending to understand is safer than asking questions. A woman is rubbing something dark onto her cheeks, maybe paint, maybe mud, maybe regret. Historians still argue whether such markings were purely decorative or held spiritual meaning. Either way, she looks intensely focused for someone smearing what suspiciously resembles old charcoal onto her face. You try the same with limited success and manage to get some in your eye. Great start. A communal fire pit smolders and a group gathers around. Someone passes a hollowed out horn filled with water and something floating in it. You decline politely and instead gnaw at a mysterious root offered by a toddler with too many teeth. Despite the clumsiness of your gear and the ominous silence from the more seasoned hunters, there's something oddly peaceful about this early hour. You feel the rhythm of breath in cold air, the hush before exertion, the sense that something monumental is just out of reach, like the calm before an ill-planned storm. A distant call echoes from the ridge, a deep, throaty sound part, bird part, didgeridoo part, existential dread. The party stiffens, shoulders rising like synchronized meerkats. That's the signal. Time to move. You shuffle toward the edge of camp with the others. A boy is wearing something on his head that looks suspiciously like a badger. It might actually be a badger. He grins, and you try not to make eye contact. No one speaks. Instead, they communicate in a series of grunts, huffs, and deeply judgmental glances. You, the outsider, get a few extra looks, most of them falling somewhere between bemused tolerance and "if you get eaten, we won't go back for your sandals. There's a moment, a brief, almost sacred pause, where everyone stands facing the horizon. The sun hasn't risen, but the clouds glow faintly. Breath plumes in the frigid air. A woman taps a bone charm around her neck and mutters something rhythmic. You swear the badger hat nods along, and then, with zero fanfare and no preparatory pep talk, everyone starts walking. You trudge. The ground is uneven and alarmingly moist in places. Your feet wrapped in what can only be described as prehistoric footbags squish unpleasantly with every step. The group keeps a brisk pace, despite carrying gear made entirely of rock sticks and vague optimism. A man to your left begins to hum. It's not a song you recognize, more a repetitive drone with the occasional throat noise, like someone trying to remember the theme tune to a nature documentary while gargling. It's oddly hypnotic. You hum along poorly. Somewhere behind you, a child sneezes and the elder smacks a tree with a staff. This may be a protective ritual, or she's just very auntie sneeze. Hard to tell. As the day threatens to begin properly, the landscape stretches out open plains dotted with ancient pines and stunted shrubs. In the far distance, the rising sun turns the horizon gold, revealing vast herds of animals moving like shadows on a cave wall. Maybe mammoths, maybe not. Your eyesight isn't great, and your prehistoric glasses never arrived. Still, for a first morning in the Stone Age, you've only tripped twice, avoided immediate death, and received a moderately acceptable grunt of approval from someone with a spear. Things could be worse. Breakfast in this timeline is less of a meal and more of a communal negotiation involving grunts, hopeful pointing, and the occasional accidental insult. The group stops at a slight dip in the landscape where tufts of dry grass provide some meager shelter from the wind. A few stones are shuffled about into what you assume is a circle of great culinary significance. Someone drops a bone in the middle with ceremonious flair. A breakfast bell, perhaps. No, just a spare bone. You sit awkwardly on a cold rock that seems purpose-built for making you question your life choices. One of the younger cave folk, possibly called Irk, or something equally vowel deficient, passes you a slab of charred root. It's warmish, smoky, slightly rubbery. You chew politely, as one does when handed food by someone who still thinks fire is a recent invention. There's also a handful of what might be berries. You pop one in your mouth and immediately regret it. It tastes like regret covered in dust. The others seem unfazed, happily crunching away like toddlers with no gag reflex. You fake a cough and discreetly tuck the rest into your sleeve. Waste Not survives slightly longer. A middle-aged woman with the intimidating posture of a gym coach gestures for you to join her. Beside a small fire, she's reignited, using what appears to be 2 bits of flint, a sneeze, and sheer spite. She's boiling something in a bowl made of bark and hardened pitch. The smell is indescribable, like old socks boiled in nostalgia. She offers you a sip. It burns your throat eyes and possibly parts of your soul. You nod gratefully. This is the point where you notice the group's version of cutlery. One man is scraping what looks like roasted marrow fat off a bone using his thumbnail. A child is drinking directly from a turtle shell, looking smug. A woman is delicately plucking beetles off her leg and examining them for breakfast suitability. She eats one. You blink. She offers you one. You blink again. You accept because peer pressure survives even in the Paleolithic. The beetle is crunchy. That's all you're willing to say about it. You try to relax to become one with your primitive breakfast surroundings, but the combination of cold knees, unknown protein sources, and a general sense that your gut flora wasn't built for this century keeps you on edge. One man farts, audibly says, and everyone nods. A cultural moment, perhaps, as you chew on a piece of something that might be roasted liver or a particularly burnt leaf. You notice the elder inspecting the horizon. She mutters to herself and spits in the dirt. Historians still argue whether this was part of a ritual for good fortune or simply an expression of general disappointment in the weather. Someone tosses you what appears to be a hardened lump of animal fat, breakfast dessert. It squelches slightly in your palm. You stare at it for too long. The group watches. You nibble one corner. It's fine. Probably. Possibly rancid. You smile anyway. Nearby, a younger man sharpens a stick on a rock with intense concentration, which might be endearing if he didn't keep glancing at you while doing it. A not so subtle message about keeping your hands off his leftover berries. Possibly. Best to scoot slightly to the left. The meal winds down with a communal humming session, which feels oddly like grace, if grace were performed by tone-deaf walruses. One by one, the group rises, brushing hands on thighs, retightening twine belts, adjusting furs that have clearly been stitched by trial error and no formal training. One fringe benefit of prehistoric breakfast. No washing up. You simply throw the remnants into the bush and walk away like it never happened. No plastic waste, no dishes, just biodegradable shame. A soft murmur passes through the group. The shaman is up. You hadn't seen him arrive, which is impressive, given that he's wearing what can only be described as an entire bird. Feathers sprouting at odd angles, a necklace of tiny bones clacking as he moves, and eyes like he's either deeply wise or just incredibly tired. He taps his staff, a long carved branch, adorned with what you hope are decorative stones and not fossilized bat droppings, and hums something low and steady. The group hushes. He mutters a few things in a rhythm you can't follow, dances in a tight circle, then falls dramatically onto a pile of moss. Everyone claps politely. You do the same. It seems breakfast always ends with interpretive dance and mild confusion. A child nearby begins rubbing sticks together in imitation. Her mother swats her gently and hands her a worm. Breakfast for the next generation. You stand stretch and immediately regret it as your back cracks like an ancient tree trunk. Everything is stiff cold and slightly itchy. The furs you're wearing seem to collect damp air like a sponge, and your boots, if you can call them, that smell faintly of last week's dinner and this morning's regret. You look around. The others are already preparing to move. Spears slung over shoulders, pouches tied around waists, with strands of sinew, quiet muttering, and nods as people fall into a loose formation. The shaman, still humming, holds his staff aloft and points vaguely eastward. You, of course, follow. What else is there to do? Breakfast may be over, but the hunt is only just beginning. You don't notice at first, but somewhere along the walk, your stick thing gets replaced with a slightly heavier stick thing, this one with what looks like a sharpened bit of antler strapped to the end. You stare at it, wondering what part of a mammoth this is supposed to affect. Maybe the toes. An older man with approximately 3 teeth and a very large nose grunts approvingly. He gestures at your weapon, then at your legs, then sort of shrugs as if to say, it's not much, but neither are you. Encouraging. You're ushered to a sort of makeshift gear pile, flat rocks arranged into a lumpy bench, topped with tools that all look like they were invented by accident. There are stone blades, rough baskets, bone needles, and one impressively smooth throwing stick that feels disturbingly well used. It all smells faintly of sweat and ambition. A woman approaches carrying a bundle wrapped in leather. She places it on the ground and unwraps it like sacred treasure. Inside cords of sinew, carefully carved bone hooks, and several tiny flint shards, each glinting dangerously in the grey light. She hands you one of each item and gives you a look that could mean, use this wisely, or don't cut yourself again. You nod with exaggerated competence and tuck everything into your belt pouch, actually just a folded bit of leather tied with twine that keeps opening at inopportune moments. Nothing in the Stone Age comes with pockets. It's a nightmare. You watch the others prepping their tools. One young man is binding what appears to be sharpened teeth onto a club, while another applies what might be pine resin to the base of a flint spearhead. It's a laborious process involving a lot of squinting and spitting. Historians still argue whether the adhesives used in these periods were entirely functional or partly ceremonial. Given the chanting involved, you're leaning toward both. To fit in, you begin fiddling with your own weapon. The flint shard slices your thumb almost immediately, and you hiss through clenched teeth. No one reacts. Apparently, blood is part of the process. You suck your thumb like a wounded toddler and press it into the hide of your tunic. Congratulations, you've added red to the otherwise beige color scheme. A man nearby, broad-balled and with a beard that could nest sparrows, holds up what looks like a club with a stone wedge tied to it. He gives a half smile and swings it through the air with a satisfying whoosh. You try the same with your own stick. It makes a sound more akin to flop. Still he grunts encouragingly and pats you on the shoulder hard enough to misalign your spine. It's at this moment that the shaman appears again, whispering to a chunk of antler, as though it's his accountant. He sees you watching and grins, showing teeth so stained with ash and bark tea that they could legally be declared fossils. He pulls from a pouch a small twisted amulet, a carved shell tied to a loop of sinew, and presses it into your hand. Ah, he intones. A gift, possibly, or a curse. The lines blur here. You wear it around your neck because refusing seems like a poor life choice. It smells of salt and mystery. You find a quiet moment to observe your own gear. Each item, clumsy though it may seem, carries centuries of tinkering. The flint flaked just so, the bone hook smooth from hours of sanding, the twine animal gut probably tied in knots you couldn't undo with a YouTube tutorial. This isn't amateur stuff. It's survival honed by repetition and possibly a lot of yelling. A boy sidles up beside you, holding a tiny woven pouch. He opens it to reveal a collection of animal teeth, wolf bear, maybe human. He points at your neck amulet, then at the pouch, then smiles. You have no idea what just happened, but you smile back like it was deeply meaningful. Moments later, someone starts yelling. It's a low, excited bark, followed by a chorus of echoes. Everyone perks up. Tools are hastily stowed, spears adjusted, and the hunting party regroups. The big bearded man gives you a nod and gestures towards the path ahead. It's time. You fall in line gear, clinking softly. Your hands are raw, your feet already numb, and you're still not entirely sure what half your equipment does. But you've got a pouch of mystery, items, a curse or charm necklace, and a stick that might be dangerous in the right light. The party moves in a staggered line, weapons held loosely, eyes scanning the terrain. Someone clicks their tongue rhythmically, a tracking signal, you think, or maybe just a prehistoric beatboxer. Either way, it's oddly soothing. As you shuffle along a small side, conversation erupts about whether mammoth hair can be woven into rope. One man swears it can, another insists it's unlucky, and the third just farts and walks ahead. Debate settled. Further ahead, you notice the tools used in subtle but clever ways. A woman takes her sharpened hook and scrapes bark from a tree, collecting it in a pouch fire starter. A boy uses a tiny bone blade to skin something very small and very recently deceased. Someone's using a net woven from grass and sinew to carry stones. This isn't just about hunting. These tools are extensions of their lives, each one a bit of ancient know how, handed down in grunts and gestures. You take out your flint shard again, examine the edge, and feel a bit better about your odds. Slightly, assuming the mammoth is both blind and deeply cooperative. The elder passes by, leans down, and points at your stick thing. Duh, she says. You nod solemnly. Do you repeat? She cackles, then walks away muttering what might be city folk. And just like that, you're part of the tribe. Well, close enough. You trudge. There's no better word for it. The ground is neither fully firm nor dramatically boggy. It just resists your feet, like it knows you're not from around here. Every step is a squelch or a crunch. Your boots, if we're being generous with that term, have become soggy sponges tied to your ankles with what might be sheep tendons. Comfort is not a feature of prehistoric fashion. The group moves with the kind of practiced silence that only comes from years of walking through open plains without podcasts. No one chats. Instead, communication is reduced to pointed looks, urgent eyebrow raises, and the occasional highly expressive grunt. You try to fit in with the facial expressions, but mostly end up looking like you've just swallowed a pine cone. Around you, the landscape rolls out in wide gray-brown waves. Scrubby shrubs, half-dead birches, and long patches of frost-dusted grass that whisper under the wind. Above, a pale sun tries to warm the scene, but mostly succeeds in creating a glare that makes everyone squint like they're reading ancient text messages carved into rocks. You glance down at your spear, stone-tipped, tightly bound with sinew slightly bendy. You hold it at what you hope is a heroic angle. Everyone else makes it look natural. You less so. A child walking beside you openly giggles and mimics your stiff grip. You drop the spear. Twice, the hunters ahead spread out slightly, stepping with surprising care over the terrain. The man with the bone necklace stops, kneels, and runs his hand through a patch of flattened grass. Everyone gathers. You do too, hoping not to look too enthusiastic, which is difficult when you're trying to interpret ancient gestures that might mean anything from mammoth this way to step here and die. Someone points at a line of distant trees. Another squints at the sky. The shaman sniffs the air dramatically. You do the same, mostly out of peer pressure. It smells like mud and mammoth dreams. At this point, there's a clear sense of movement direction. You follow uphill, slightly past a cluster of mossy rocks that might be natural or might be an ancient seating area. One man taps them as he passes and murmurs something reverent. Historians still argue whether such stones were territorial markers, ceremonial objects, or just very satisfying to knock on when bored. The incline steepens. Your thighs burn in protest. Your fur tunic chafes in at least 5 new places. The sun, indecisive at best, slips behind a cloud, and a chill descends like a passive-aggressive houseguest. Still you walk. Occasionally someone stops to check a print in the mud-large oval, and depressingly unclear. One hunter insists it's fresh mammoth. Another scoffs and says it's definitely aurochs. The debate escalates until a third hunter solves the problem by stepping in it. The track now ruined is deemed irrelevant. You appreciate the Stone Age approach to conflict resolution. As you crest a ridge, you spot something ahead. A tall bare tree stripped of leaves, its bark scratched with horizontal lines. It's eerie. Everyone pauses. A whisper runs through the group. You get the sense it's a landmark of some kind. A woman near the front makes a low whistling sound through her teeth. The group listens. Nothing. Then faintly, a return whistle. The tension breaks, and people begin moving again. Apparently, it's just a check-in tree. The prehistoric version of texting your mate, we're 5 minutes away. The rhythm of the walk returns. You focus on not twisting an ankle in one of the many deceptive dips. The boy with the beetles from earlier hops along beside you, effortlessly agile. He hums a simple tune, and before long others pick it up. It's catchy if slightly mournful, like a sea shanty composed by someone who's never seen the sea. An hour passes, maybe 2. Time in the Stone Age is measured in foot blisters, and how many times you think surely this hill is the last one. The group stops again at a small stream. The water is clear, bitterly cold, and tastes faintly of minerals and decisions made without plumbing. Everyone crouches to drink, cupping hands or using hollowed gourds. You do the same and immediately spill half of it down your fur tunic. No one laughs, but you catch the badger hat kids smirking. Afterwards, the hunters use the break to check their gear. One woman sharpens her blade on a rock with graceful efficiency. A man reties his netting with long loops, muttering under his breath. You try to look busy and end up rearranging your twine belt 3 times until it falls off entirely. A faint sound carries on the wind, distant, rhythmic, heavy. You all freeze, ears tilt, eyes scan the tree line. That sound, was that? One of the elders points, lips pressed tight. It was distant but unmistakable. The low resonant thump of something massive moving. Maybe a mammoth. Maybe not. No one knows for sure. Yet there's a spark of excitement in the group now. The shuffle of tired limbs turns purposeful. You feel it too, a tiny buzz of adrenaline beneath the exhaustion, beneath the blisters, and the awkward stick thing you've been hauling. The hunt is no longer abstract. There's something out there, and it might be watching you, too. It starts with dung. As many great adventures do, one of the hunters ahead stops, suddenly crouches, and motions everyone closer. You lean in, joining the others, as they form a reverent semicircle around. Well, yes, that is a steaming pile of mammoth dung. Fresh, fragrant, and deeply unmissable. The group hums approvingly, as if someone's just uncorked a bottle of rare wine. One man pokes it gently with a stick, then sniffs the air like he's auditioning for a role as nose of the year. Another gestures to the flattened grass nearby. It's warm, recently crushed, and absolutely covered in mammoth-sized hoofprints. The good news, you're close. The bad news, you're close. There's a moment of murmured debate. Someone waves their arms in the general direction of that way, while another points towards the hills and makes what sounds like a frustrated squirrel noise. It's unclear who's in charge at this point, but the shaman settles the issue by throwing a handful of dried leaves into the air and following whichever direction they flutter off toward. This apparently is science. You follow weaving through knee-high grasses and the occasional stunted shrub. Every few minutes, someone stops to inspect another clue: a broken branch, a patch of churned earth, an unusually large sneeze from the distance. Historians still argue whether early trackers relied purely on visual signs or employed olfactory strategies as well. Based on the amount of dung everyone is sniffing, you suspect both. Soon the group fans out again in a loose line. Each hunter treads carefully, eyes scanning for the tiniest disturbance. You try to mimic their focus, though you're mostly watching your own feet, to avoid another unfortunate incident with hidden puddles. Your socks again, a term used generously, are already soaking, and your toes are beginning to consider mutiny. Then someone ahead gestures sharply. All movement halts. You freeze mid-step, half crouched behind a lopsided bush. The hunter points again, this time toward a wide, muddy patch of earth at the base of a low hill. You squint. There they are. Footprints. Big ones. Each print is the size of a dustbin lid, sunken deep and spaced like slow thunder. A mammoth has definitely passed this way. And not long ago, judging by the still seeping edges of the prints. The group gathers in quiet awe. The badger hat kid does a small celebratory jig before being gently restrained by an older cousin. You consider joining the dance, but your knees say no. Someone picks up a strand of hair caught on a low branch. It's wiry, coarse, and longer than your forearm. The shaman sniffs it and declares, with the authority of a man who talks to rocks soon. You resume the march. The air feels heavier now, not just with the promise of mammoth, but with the weight of impending effort. Spears are gripped tighter, nets adjusted. A woman near you checks the sharpness of her bone-tipped arrow by slicing it across her palm, not deeply, just enough to raise a bead of blood. You pretend not to see it, and instead focus on tightening the twine on your own weapon, though it mostly results in giving yourself a light rope burn. And then, out of nowhere, the wind shifts. A smell hits you. Not unpleasant, just enormous, earthy, musty, like a wet wool jumper that's been storing secrets in a cave. Everyone smells it at once and stands stock still. The group drops into a crouch. You follow, though your crouch resembles more of a slow collapse. The hunters move now like shadows, quiet, focused low to the ground. You do your best not to wheeze audibly. Up ahead, the land dips into a broad, muddy hollow, surrounded by birches. There's movement, a shape, something hulking, massive, and slowly shifting behind the trees. The air vibrates with low rhythmic snorts. You're too far to see clearly, but the outline is unmistakable. Mammoth. The word alone seems to thrum in your bones. There's awe in it. Terror, too. This isn't just a big elephant with a wig. It's a prehistoric tank with hair. And you are at best carrying a mildly annoying stick. The hunters whisper, now pointing out possible routes, flanking positions, and where you should probably stand, so you're less likely to mess everything up. You get the sense they mean well. One man gestures toward a rocky outcrop. He points to you, then to the outcrop, then mimes falling and dying. You think he's trying to tell you not to climb it. You nod and back away slowly. There's still no sign of the mammoth's face, just glimpses of fur swaying bulk and the occasional glint of curved ivory tusks between the trees. But that's enough. The tension builds. The group begins to fan out surrounding the hollow. Nets are being unfurled. One woman uncorks a pouch and sprinkles something onto the ground, possibly a scent lure. Possibly just something that smells worse than you. The wind shifts again, and the mammoth snorts louder this time. It knows, or maybe it doesn't. Historians still argue whether mammoths had excellent smell average eyesight or simply didn't care. Unless you physically poked them. Whatever the truth, the hunters are moving faster now, urgency in every step. You crouch behind a bush-heart pounding weapon, gripped in hands that suddenly feel too modern for this. The air smells of damp earth, wet fur, and nerves. The dung wasn't lying. You are very, very close. The bog comes out of nowhere. One moment, you're creeping along behind a line of crouched hunters, trying to breathe as quietly as a mouse in slippers. The next, your left foot disappears into cold, squishy nothing. You pitch forward with the grace of a sack of turnips arms, flailing, and land flat on your stomach, in what can only be described as ancient soup. Someone behind you snorts with laughter. You roll over, slowly pull your leg free with a grim schlop, and try not to think about what might be squirming in your fur trousers. The shaman of all people offers you a hand. His fingers are painted with ochre and ash, his nails crusted with something that may once have been ceremonial, or just soup-related, bog spirits. He says gravely, patting your shoulder, as if this explains everything. It does not. But it's hard to argue when your pants now weigh 2 stone and smell like a pond's worst secret. The party has paused at the edge of a marshy clearing where the earth gives underfoot, and everything makes a sucking sound when you move. You're instructed wordlessly through a complicated series of eyebrows and hand gestures to stay near the rear while the others consult. The shaman kneels humming in that low drone-in way that seems to summon either wisdom or a headache. He sprinkles ground herbs into the bog murmurs and then dramatically produces a mushroom from inside his robe. It's blue, not a cute blue either. This was banned in 3 timelines, kinda blue. He eats it whole, chews, sways, and then begins to sing. It's not a song, you know. It sounds like whale mating calls filtered through a very enthusiastic didgeridoo. He spins slowly, arms outstretched, face to the sky. The others do not seem alarmed. A few even join in, though, thankfully without the mushroom. You sit on a root and take a breather, watching what is effectively a prehistoric flash mob in slow motion. You try to join in by humming, but it comes out sounding like a dying fridge. Still, no one shushes you. After a time, the shaman collapses, cross-legged, into the mud, his eyes half shut. He smiles clearly in another realm. You consider asking him what he sees, but think better of it. The last time you spoke directly to him, he tried to anoint your forehead with squirrel fat. The air here is thick with mist rising in lazy spirals from the warmer bog pockets. It smells strongly of peat decay and adventure that probably won't end well. The woman with the bird feather necklace speaks next. She points toward the trees beyond the bog and mimes a mammoth. Then she mimes a person being stepped on. Then she mimes what you hope is victory. You nod solemnly. Yes, that sounds about right. The party begins moving again, gingerly, stepping from one exposed root or tussock to another. like children playing the world's least fun game of the floor, is lava. One man nearly vanishes up to his knees, pulls himself out, and keeps going without a word. Apparently, this is normal. You follow less gracefully. Every step is an ordeal. Your foot sinks. You wobble. You flail. Repeat. Somewhere along the way, your left boot gives up and detaches itself entirely. You retrieve it with a sigh and stuff it into your pouch. Barefoot, bog hopping it is. Halfway across the badger hat, Kid offers you a hand. You take it humbled. He pulls you up onto a rock ledge and then spits neatly into the mud. Respect, apparently, is mutual. From this slightly elevated perch, you spot something curious ahead. A small circular arrangement of stones, partially hidden by reeds. It doesn't look natural. The group veers toward it, intrigued. When you reach it, the shaman is already there, muttering and tapping the stones with his staff. The formation is ancient, even by Stone Age standards, weathered and worn-flecked with lichen. Some of the stones bear markings, shallow carvings, almost glyph-like. One resembles a mammoth, another is ambiguous, a fish, a tree, a map. Historians still argue whether such carvings were symbolic or purely decorative. You wonder if this was once a shrine or a warning or just prehistoric graffiti. The group pays quiet homage, touching the stones, whispering short phrases, bowing slightly. You do the same, uncertain but respectful. There's a tangible stillness here, as if the air itself remembers something. It hums. The shaman stands dazed but smiling. Here, he says simply, it passed here. He might be right. The reeds are trampled in places, and a few fresh tufts of mammoth hair snagged on low branches suggest a recent visit. Energized by the find, the party presses onward, now weaving through the last stretch of bog toward drier ground. You slip twice, once face first, but by this point, no one even reacts. They've accepted you as a mildly clumsy spirit of the wetlands. As you step onto firmer earth, your foot squelches loudly and releases a small puff of gas. You pretend it didn't happen. The others politely ignore it. You're muddy, smelly, vaguely cursed, and still slightly high from the shaman's proximity. But you're one step closer to the mammoth, and possibly several steps deeper into ancient nonsense. The break is sudden. Someone, one of the older hunters with an impressively asymmetrical jaw, raises a hand, and the whole group halts. You nearly walk straight into him, but manage a wobbly stop that lands you in a bush. It's mostly twigs, very sharp ones. What now, an ambush? A nearby mammoth? No, a stick. Not even a good stick, really. More like a particularly pointy branch with some ominous grooves in it. But the mood changes instantly. People gather around the stick, like it's just declared itself the next tribal chief. One woman picks it up, examines it with the gravity of someone evaluating a rare gemstone, and then frowns. She turns to another hunter and says something that sounds very much like a growl. He shrugs. She jabs the stick in his direction. Now there's a full-blown grunt-off brewing. You watch fascinated as a semi-civilized stick-based argument unfolds. Turns out the stick was used for sketching. Someone, presumably the hunter she's jabbing at, has defaced a set of mammoth track diagrams earlier that morning. This is serious. Nothing ruins a hunt like bad cave art. To resolve things, they all crouch around a patch of damp earth and begin drawing new diagrams with the disputed stick. You shuffle closer and peer over their shoulders. There are at least three distinct mammoth sketches on the ground. One looks like an actual mammoth, another resembles a lumpy dog. The third is either a spiritual representation or a baked potato. The woman grunts pointedly and circles hers. A younger man adds extra tusks to his for emphasis. Someone else draws a small human figure with very exaggerated muscles next to theirs. Interpretive art meets Stone Age ego. You nod thoughtfully, as if this all makes perfect sense. Someone hands you the stick. Oh no, you draw. It's supposed to be a mammoth, but it comes out looking like a sad cloud with legs. A small silence follows. The Badger Hat Kid claps. Everyone else grunts neutrally and goes back to the other sketches. Crisis averted. After the art debate settles, the shaman takes the stick and uses it to trace a new route in the mud. One that loops around a ridge, skirts a shallow stream, and ends in a large X. He taps the X 3 times with the stick, then stares at the sky. Is this the plan? A vision? A game? Historians still argue whether such gestures indicated tactical movement, spiritual communion, or just boredom. Either way, the stick has spoken. The group nods and begins preparing for the next leg. You take a moment to examine the tools again. Some of the gear now seems more specialized than you realized, netting woven from hair-thin fibers clubs, with grooves designed to catch bone and darts so fine they might double as knitting needles. This isn't just brute force, it's prehistoric engineering. One man, short and wide like a walking cupboard, is fashioning a trap using 3 Y-shaped sticks and a pile of rocks. He's working fast, weaving sinew and muttering as he balances the rocks above what you hope is a non-fatal pit. You inch away. Another group is assembling something more elaborate, a sling of sorts made from twisted gut and bark fiber. They practice flinging stones into a nearby tree with surprisingly accurate and terrifying results. You duck more than once, then suddenly it's quiet again. The group, without any verbal cue, moves back into formation. The argument, the sketches, the trap tinkering, it's all packed up as quickly as it began. The disputed stick is snapped in half and tossed into the underbrush like a disgraced diplomat. The mood shifts from playful to purposeful. The trees thin, giving way to a low rocky hill overlooking a wide clearing. The land beyond is a mix of grasses, tree clumps, and half-frozen puddles, perfect mammoth country. According to the experts, who are all currently sniffing the wind and squinting dramatically, you all gather at the crest. The shaman hums again, this time more softly, as if trying to tune into a distant frequency only mammoths can hear. A new plan forms, relayed through gestures, grunts, and a lot of urgent eyebrow gymnastics. The group will split. Half will circle around to flush the mammoth out. The rest, including you, to your mild horror, will wait in the brush to intercept. You smile nervously and immediately trip over your own spear. Before you can protest, the decision is sealed. A child smears a stripe of mud across your cheek in what might be solidarity or mockery. Either way, you're committed. You take your position beside a boulder and crouch low, heart-thumping eyes on the distant trees. The others beside you are silent, still, focused. You try to match their calm. It's not easy when you're cradling a stick that barely qualifies as weaponry, and your last major contribution was drawing a woolly potato. A light wind rustles through the grasses. Insects buzz. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the soft splash of hooves or tusks, or something enormous displacing water. Any moment now, the chase might begin. You grip your spear a little tighter. Try to ignore the fact that your legs have gone entirely numb, and whisper a silent apology to whatever poor mammoth is about to get startled by a gang of deeply determined cavemen and one very unqualified modern guest. Lunch, as it turns out, arrives not with a mammoth roar, but with a collective sigh and a particularly loud stomach growl from the man to your left, who looks like he could chew bark and call it a snack. The hunting party, after much crouching, squinting, and pretending not to be freezing, accepts the universal truth. Tracking mammoths is hungry work. Someone calls out a low rising grunt. Clearly, the prehistoric equivalent of "let's break for lunch." Spears are grounded nets coiled, and everyone slowly emerges from their hidey holes like woodland creatures stretching after a nap. The tension evaporates, replaced by the weary camaraderie of people who've all agreed they're not going to catch anything right now, so they might as well eat something strange and call it nourishment. You all gather beneath a scraggly tree that offers minimal shelter and even less comfort. Still, it's a spot, and spots are valuable. One of the women lays down a mat made of stitched together hides, Stone Age picnic chic. A man beside her opens a pouch with dramatic flair, revealing a clump of cold, congealed fat, possibly from a seal, or judging by the color, something less aquatic. With great pride, he slices a piece off and hands it to you. It jiggles. You consider the implications. Everyone watches. You take a bite. It's an experience. The texture is somewhere between wax and despair, but it's oddly filling. Warmth creeps back into your limbs, either from calories or shame. Still, you nod appreciatively, and this earns you a grunt of approval. Progress. Someone else passes around a handful of crushed berries, tiny, tart, and alarmingly gritty. You chew carefully, trying not to crunch anything that wasn't supposed to be crunched. The woman beside you mixes her berries into a paste and spreads it onto a strip of dried meat. She offers you a corner. You accept. It tastes like beef jerky left in a gym bag. Not bad, all things considered. A child offers you a wriggling something on a leaf. You decline. He eats it anyway and smiles with all his teeth. Too many, you think. Far too many. Meanwhile, the shaman is brewing a mystery. Over a tiny fire he's built with unearthly speed, he's placed a shallow bowl of carved wood. Into this, he drops a collection of herbs, crushed bark, and a few things you'd rather not identify. It simmers ominously. He stirs with a twig that might also be a wand. When it's done, he sips, smacks his lips, and lets out a satisfied sigh. He offers the bowl to you. Of course he does. You take a small sip. It tastes like moss-old coins and a strange sweetness that might be honey or hallucination. Your throat warms. Your fingers tingle. The shaman nods sagely. Spirit broth, he says. You hand the bowl back and sit very still, waiting to see whether your legs begin to levitate or if that tingling was just from the questionable fat you ate earlier. While the rest of the group eats, they begin what is clearly a tradition, the lunch tale. One hunter stands and, gesturing wildly, begins recounting a past mammoth encounter. There's a lot of miming, stomping, trumpeting, throwing things, and at one point, he impersonates a frightened bird. Everyone laughs. Then another takes over, telling a tale with such intensity that you're drawn in despite not understanding a word. She stabs the air with her fingers, mimics a tumble, then slaps her chest proudly. From context, you gather that she once survived a charge by hiding under a log. Or maybe she headbutted the mammoth. It's unclear. Either way, she's the hero of the story, and the applause thigh slaps and deep whoops is generous. You're invited to share something. You panic slightly. What do you even say to a group of fur-clad mammoth hunters about your life? So you pantomime something simple, a rabbit chase. You flail your arms a lot, pretend to trip over a bush, make a dramatic face when you catch the rabbit. It's not your best work. But they laugh. Even the badger hat kid claps. Lunch winds down with shared yawns and a few satisfied belly rubs. One man chews thoughtfully on a strip of dried fish and begins humming a tune that's quickly picked up by the others. It's low, repetitive, and strangely relaxing, like a lullaby for exhausted warriors. You hum along quietly. Your foot is still damp. Your tunic still smells of bog. But there's peace in the moment. The shaman claps his hands once. Everyone stirs. It's time to move again. The hunt paused for breadless sandwiches, and bog tea resumes with the same quiet urgency. You rise, brush off leaves, and adjust your pouch, which now holds 3 berries, a suspicious root, and the boot you've given up trying to wear. As the party fans out and disappears once more into the underbrush, you glance back at the lunch spot. There's no sign anyone was ever there, just trampled grass and the lingering scent of mystery stew. Back to the mammoth trail. The problem with mammoth tracking, aside from the cold, the mysterious food, and the constant sense of impending trampling, is that sometimes, even with all the dung and footprints and shamanic whispering, the mammoth simply vanishes. That's where you are now. Absolutely nowhere. It starts with confidence. The hunters are striding briskly, pointing at bent branches and muttering approvingly over upturned stones. They find a pile of something lumpy and declare it important. Spirits are high. One man does a little dance you interpret as success is near, but then slowly the certainty seeps away. First, the prints get less clear. Then someone realizes they've been following reindeer tracks. Not mammoth, not even close. Long and narrow and distinctly deer-shaped. A rookie error, but delivered with such Stone Age gusto that no one wants to admit it. The group halts. There is silence, punctuated by one long, mournful grunt. The kind of grunt that means we may have walked in a large cold circle. Several hunters gather around a fresh track, peering as if willing it to become a mammoth print through sheer conviction. A debate begins. Voices rise, hands wave. One person points at a tree with extreme emotion. Historians still argue whether these heated moments were strategic disagreements or just the prehistoric version of you should have asked for directions. The shaman, who's been eerily quiet for a while, finally intervenes by picking up a handful of mud, squeezing it theatrically, and muttering something in a language that might not even be real. He tosses the mud onto a rock, stares at the pattern, then announces a direction with complete confidence. Everyone accepts this. You try to, but the chosen direction appears to be directly into a bramble patch. Still, you follow like the rest, trusting in ancient wisdom, or at least ancient theater. 10 minutes in, it becomes obvious that this is not the right way. The brambles scratch the mud, thickens, and the tracks, such as they were, disappear entirely. The badger hat kid tugs your sleeve and gestures a looping path behind him. You nod, but it's too late. The group is committed. One of the elder hunters starts complaining in low, rumbling tones. He points back. The way you came draws a spiral in the dirt with his toe and throws his hands up dramatically. A younger woman responds with equal passion, miming mammoth ears and stomping feet. From what you gather, she thinks the mammoth doubled back, or possibly vanished into the sky. Her logic is vague, but spirited. The argument spreads. Soon, you're in the middle of what can only be described as a full scale prehistoric disagreement. No shouting, no swearing, just loud pointed grunts, and the world's most passive aggressive stick drawing contest. The shaman watches all this with a peaceful expression, possibly because he started chewing on another of those alarming mushrooms. He smiles at you and says, "The mammoth walks not just the land, but the heart." You nod wisely, despite not understanding anything and strongly suspecting he's high as a kite. Eventually, a decision is made, not because anyone wins the argument, but because the elder hunter sits down and starts eating a strip of dried something. This is universally understood to mean break time, and no one wants to miss lunch. Round two. You collapse onto a mossy patch and sigh. Around you, the party snacks quietly. No one speaks of the failed trail. That would imply failure. Instead, there's a subtle shift toward Plan B. Maybe we find a different mammoth, or wait for the first one to find us. Either option sounds plausible in the current fog of confusion and crushed enthusiasm. To fill the silence, the Badger Hat Kid starts drawing again, this time in the dirt with a bit of charcoal. He sketches another mammoth, big, shaggy, slightly square. Then he adds a small figure with a stick. You. The stick is very short. You raise an eyebrow. He grins. You draw your own version, slightly taller, more dynamic. The kid laughs and draws a second figure beside it, the shaman floating. You both chuckle. The others notice, and soon a group of hunters joins in scribbling a collaborative mammoth epic. One man adds fire, another draws a pit trap. Someone else contributes a tree for no clear reason. The ground becomes a shifting storyboard of ambition and artistic license. Historians still argue whether prehistoric sketching served as strategy superstition or simply the world's earliest doodling. Whatever the case, it lightens the mood. The group stands, at last, slightly more optimistic now that they've drawn their success into existence. A new route is proposed, less based on tracks and more on intuition bird patterns, and the fact that someone just remembered they saw a flattened shrub earlier that felt mammothy. You don't argue. You shoulder your spear, tighten your increasingly unreliable twine belt, and follow once more into the frosty unknown. The mammoth is out there somewhere. You're just not entirely sure where there is anymore. The first snowflake lands on your nose like a polite warning, then another, then 27 more, all in the span of 3 seconds. You blink up into a sky that was clear just moments ago, and now seems to be unloading a small angry cloud directly onto your expedition. The temperature, which had been merely rude before, turns downright surly. The group collectively sighs, not loudly, just a shift in posture, a few resigned mutters, and one well-timed fart that seems to say, "Here we go again." You tug your fur tunic tighter, though it does very little to block the wind that's now slicing across the ridge like an invisible cheese grater. Your boots squelch. Your spear is slippery. And somewhere inside your sleeve, a berry you forgot to eat is turning into jam. Someone calls a halt. Not the shaman this time, but a square-shouldered man with more eyebrow than face. He gestures toward a cluster of boulders nestled in a dip between two hills. A natural shelter. You all veer toward it with a unity that suggests no one wants to be out in whatever the sky is currently planning. Once inside the shelter, a kind of shallow rocky scoop, you feel the difference instantly. Less wind, less snow in the eyes, still cold, but manageable. The hunters begin their usual tasks, checking gear, grunting in various intonations, and adjusting layers with the brisk efficiency of people who've done this far too many times. You sit on a flat rock and try to wring out your sleeve, which now contains roughly half a pint of icy regret. The badger hat kid sits beside you and offers a small handful of something crunchy, possibly dried roots, possibly bark, possibly bugs. You eat it anyway because warmth is calories and taste buds are optional. As the snow thickens outside the party, shifts from tracking mode to waiting mode, someone starts sharpening a spearhead, the rhythmic scrape oddly soothing. Another begins retwisting a net with astonishing precision, her fingers flying despite the chill. You realize that even in downtime, they're always doing something, always preparing. Rest is just work in disguise. The shaman predictably has found a patch of rock to whisper at. He lays out a few charms bits of antler feathers, a disturbingly shiny rock, and begins humming again. It's a new melody this time. Less trance, more lullaby. A few others join in humming low eyes closed. Then a quiet shift in tone. Someone nearby lets out a cough, and the entire mood subtly changes. Politics. You don't need words to know it. There's an undercurrent now, a tension you can feel more than hear. Two of the hunters, one broad-shouldered one, wiry and sharp-eyed, are not making eye contact. They're doing that thing where they pretend the other doesn't exist, which somehow makes their presence even louder. The others notice there's a shuffle, an adjustment of weapons. The humming fades. The wiry one finally speaks a series of clipped low sounds, not angry, but pointed. The big one responds, voice flat. You pick up one word repeated 3 times car. It might mean mammoth. It might mean stop talking. It might be a warning. You're not fluent in ancient passive aggression, but the vibe is clear. The shaman rises slowly and steps between them. He doesn't speak. He just taps his staff on the ground once, twice, 3 times, then sits back down and resumes humming like nothing happened. And that's it. The moment passes. No blows, no raised voices. Just a quiet re-establishment of the old order. The mammoth hunt comes first. Personal squabbles later. Maybe. Historians still argue whether early hunter-gatherer groups maintained leadership through ritual consensus, sheer charisma, or just being the best at not dying. Whatever the method, the hierarchy here is flexible but firm. Everyone knows their place. Even you, unofficially ranked somewhere between mildly amusing guest and liability with legs. Eventually the snow tapers off. The sky lightens to a sullen grey. The wind dies a little and the shelter feels less like a fortress and more like a very cold waiting room. One by one the group rises, stretching stiff limbs, cracking joints, retying straps and belts. You follow suit, albeit with more creaking and significantly less grace. Before leaving, the shaman presses a tiny object into your hand, a carved bead smooth and warm from his palm. He doesn't explain, just nods once and turns away. You pocket it. Add it to the growing collection of inexplicable trinkets that now includes a lumpy berry, a twig that might be cursed, and a flint shard you're pretty sure is just a broken rock. Back on the move, the ground crunches under a fresh crust of snow. Tracks, if there were any, are gone, obliterated. The party moves slower, now more cautious. A new route is chosen, not by the loudest voice, but by consensus. The group leans subtly toward the wiry hunter this time. You don't know what changed, but the others accept it. So you do too. You trail along at the edge watching as the world around you turns from bleak grey to brighter white. The air is sharp, clean, heavy with possibility. The mammoth may be farther now, or closer, but the snow has cleared. More than just the air it's washed away. The trail reshuffled the group and left you with one very cold berry squashed in your pocket and the unsettling feeling that politics, even in the Stone Age, is mostly about timing. The trees part with the kind of drama usually reserved for dream sequences or overly expensive wildlife documentaries. Ahead lies a clearing, broad, silent, rimmed with hoarfrost, and utterly still. It's the kind of place that makes you instinctively hold your breath, not out of fear, but because the air itself seems to be listening. And then you see it. Well, something. At first glance, it's a shape. Large, covered in shaggy hair the color of bad porridge, standing very still in the middle of the clearing. You freeze. Everyone does. The entire hunting party seems to melt into the underbrush, crouching, creeping, barely breathing. Your heart pounds. This is it, the big one, the woolly marvel you've been bumbling toward all day. You grip your spear, you crouch, you prepare. The shaman points toward the shape and whispers something that might be a blessing or a weather report. The lead hunter edges forward closer, closer, and then it moves, but not with the thundering grace of a mammoth. No, this is wrong. It shudders once turns slowly and lets out a sound that can only be described as a long, wet raspberry. A sound that does not belong to a mammoth. The figure lurches forward, revealing itself fully, not a mammoth, a woolly rhinoceros, or possibly an unusually furry boulder with delusions of grandeur. Historians still argue whether prehistoric people actively hunted woolly rhinos, or mostly just tried to avoid them due to their famously terrible tempers and an unfortunate tendency to charge anything taller than a bush. Your current view, avoid. Avoid now. The rhino, which is now very much aware of your group, snorts, stamps its foot, and begins to advance with the subtlety of a falling tree. The group does not wait. Everyone moves at once, dispersing like smoke in wind. You stumble backward, tripping over a root, landing in what you suspect is a shallow pile of very old dung. The rhino charges through the spot where you were just standing, its horn slicing the air like a hairy missile. The hunters regroup behind a copse of trees. Spears are raised, but no one throws. No one wants to fight a rhino today. Not without several more nets and a much stronger sense of optimism. The rhino, perhaps satisfied that it has made its point, snorts again and trundles off towards the horizon, tail swishing indignantly. You lie in the grass, trying to remember how lungs work. The badger hat kid appears above you and offers a hand. You take it. He grins and makes a small gesture that you suspect means, well, that was dramatic. Back on your feet, you survey the group. No injuries, just bruised egos and slightly tangled netting. One hunter shakes her fist at the retreating rhino. Another mutters something that sounds suspiciously like, next time, let it nap. You gather again, slightly winded, slightly embarrassed. The mammoth wasn't here, just a rhino impersonator with performance issues. Spirits are low, but not broken. This is, after all, still a day in the hunt. False alarms are part of the rhythm. To cope, the group does what humans have always done. In such moments, they begin to joke. The rhino is reenacted. Someone mimics its snort. Someone else pretends to be you, falling dramatically into the dirt. The laughter is quiet but warm. Even the shaman chuckles, eyes twinkling before declaring, "It was a test," of what he does not say. Still, the incident serves a purpose. It wakes everyone up, refocuses the mission. The mammoth is out there, yes, but now the group is reminded that other large hairy creatures also roam these lands, and not all of them are in the mood for storytelling. You brush yourself off, check your pouch. The berry jam is now completely out of control, and adjust your gear. The scare has passed. You're fine, muddy, slightly traumatized, but fine. The elder hunter points west. A new path, one that skirts the clearing and loops toward a narrow gorge. The terrain looks harder, but the sense of direction feels sharper now. Everyone's moving with fresh determination. You fall into line spear in hand stomach, slightly queasy from the adrenaline and the unfortunate route you nibbled earlier. The shaman passes you and says, "Rhino dreams are lucky." You don't ask for clarification. As the group vanishes once more into trees and shadow, you glance back at the clearing. The snow there is already falling again, covering the prints, erasing the event. Soon it'll be like it never happened, except of course for the smell. That lingers. The plan, if you can call it that, is ambitious. The group has found a promising ravine not far from where the rhino tried to test your sprinting ability. It's narrow with steep banks and a natural bottleneck at one end, exactly the sort of place you'd want to steer a mammoth into if you were hoping to trap it without immediately being trampled flat. The hunters gather, crouch low behind a screen of frost-bitten bushes, and begin laying out a strategy using hand gestures, sticks, and dirt. You watch as lines are drawn, then rubbed out, then redrawn with dramatic finger stabs. There's some back and forth, a few suspicious looks exchanged, and at one point, someone draws what appears to be a very tiny mammoth wearing a hat. The general idea becomes clear: lure the mammoth down into the ravine, drive it toward the choke point, then disable it with a combination of spears, nets, shouting, and prayer. It's a decent plan given the tools. The only problem? It's absolutely gloriously overcomplicated. The group splits. Half will flank the higher ground, making noise and pushing the mammoth toward the gully. The rest, including you, will wait in the ravine behind hastily assembled cover made from branches, moss, and what you strongly suspect is an upside-down sled. If all goes well, the mammoth will stumble into the trap, get a bit tangled, and be taken down cleanly. If all goes poorly, it will run straight through you, like a hairy juggernaut with no brakes. You help set the trap, not because you're confident in your mammoth snagging skills, but because everyone else is so busy weaving nets and planting sharpened stakes that no one notices you tying your twine belt to a rock for stability. You move branches, you pile rocks, you try not to sneeze. The shaman blesses the trap by tapping it 3 times with his staff and throwing a handful of dried berries at it. You're not sure if this is traditional or just his way of hiding snacks. Once everything is in place, you crouch low behind a log and wait. The forest is quiet. Then comes the noise. It starts far off, rhythmic shouts, drum-like banging, and the occasional howl. The flankers are doing their job, creating a racket to flush the beast. You grip your spear tighter. Your breathing slows. You feel the tension in your shoulders, the kind you get just before someone announces your number at the dentist. Then a sound unlike any other. A crack, a thud, the unmistakable crashing of branches, and the earth shaking rumble of something very large and very alive moving toward you. The ground vibrates. Birds burst from the trees in a frantic flutter. You peek through a gap in the brush, and there it is. A real mammoth, massive, shaggy, majestic. Its tusks curve forward like the arms of a giant embracing the wind. Its fur is matted with frost. Its breath billows in great puffs as it lumbers toward the ravine. Your heart is now somewhere in your throat. It enters the gully exactly as planned, distracted by the flankers still hooting and throwing rocks from above. It moves cautiously at first, aware something's amiss. But the noise drives it forward. Then it hits the first part of the trap, a shallow pit disguised with branches. Its front foot drops not enough to trap it, but enough to startle. It stumbles, snorts, and barrels ahead, straight into the nets strung across the path. For a moment, just a moment, everything seems like it might actually work. The mammoth panics. It thrashes, flailing its trunk tusks, gouging the earth. The nets snap. One catches on a tusk and yanks sideways. It screams high and wild and full of fury. The sound is deafening. Hunters leap from hiding, hurling spears. Most bounce off its thick hide. A few stick. One man gets too close and is flung sideways like a sack of flour. You remain behind your log, clutching your spear, unsure if you're meant to leap in heroically or remain a very small part of the scenery. Then, as quickly as it began, it's over. The mammoth, now bleeding slightly, but still very much alive, crashes through the remaining trap and disappears into the trees with the grace of an enraged bus. The forest swallows it whole. Silence follows. Utter, exhausted silence. The hunters regroup slowly. No one speaks. The mood is not despair, but it's definitely not triumph. The plan was clever. The execution, less so. But no one's dead. That counts for something. You stand, legs trembling, and join the others in examining what remains of the trap. Splintered wood, shredded net, one very flattened bush. A hunter retrieves a bloodied spear, muttering something that might translate to next time use 2 traps. The shaman, meanwhile, is poking at a crushed berry on the ground and declaring the mammoth spirit-bound now. Everyone nods. Of course it is. You help gather the tools, pack up the nets, rub the mud off your tunic, knowing full well it won't make a difference. A trap too clever by half, and just clever enough to survive. You're not entirely sure when the shift happens. One moment, you're trudging back through snow-dusted brush saw and slightly deflated from the failed trap. The next, you hear a sound behind you, a crackling of branches too deliberate to be wind. Everyone stops. The silence stretches. Then another sound, thump. Thump. Close. Heavy. Rhythmic. You don't need anyone to explain it. The mammoth is back. Or maybe it never left. You spin, ducking behind a tree that suddenly feels very thin. Others scatter to flanking positions. There's no time to reset a trap. No time to plan. This is now survival, not sport. The mammoth bursts from the trees in a blur of fur and fury. Its eyes are wide tusks, slick with melting snow, and its trumpeting roar is the sound of the Pleistocene saying, nope, it's not charging at prey. It's charging at you. The group reacts in a blur. Spears fly, some bounce, a few hit. One ricochets dramatically into a tree and embeds there with a satisfying thunk, which you would admire more if you weren't actively being run at. You sprint, not gracefully, mind you. more like a sack of bones doing interpretive dance. Branches whip at your face, your pouch flaps wildly. Something that was once a berry bounces off your knee and vanishes into history. Behind you, the mammoth crashes through undergrowth like a hairy avalanche. You don't look back. You don't need to. The ground tells you enough, it's shaking. Up ahead, the terrain dips. You follow instinct and gravity, sliding down a slope into a narrow gully. A few others do the same. One hunter vaults a fallen log like a deer. You trip on the same log and land with your face in the moss. From somewhere above, a spear whistles past your ear. The mammoth barrels through the top of the ravine, confused, skidding slightly. Its sheer bulk is too much for the slope. It slows, pauses. You hear it snort, long, irritated, and suspicious. Then it turns, back the way it came. Gone, just like that. Everyone breathes again, or wheezes. There's a lot of wheezing. You roll onto your back and stare up at the sky, which is cheerfully blue, as if it had nothing to do with any of this. Around you, the others gather, slowly bruised, panting, and some visibly steaming in the cold air. No one speaks right away. It's the kind of silence that says, well, that escalated. The badger hat kid walks up, holding your spear. You hadn't realized you dropped it. He hands it to you like it's a toy you forgot at school. You mutter your thanks or a prayer, or possibly just a sound resembling both. The elder hunter mutters something, and everyone glances at the ridge where the mammoth vanished. There's a brief exchange, shrugs, low whistles, a hand raised skyward. The consensus seems to be it's had enough, and so you've become the hunted. It's a shift in tone none of you expected. The predator becoming the slightly embarrassed prey. The mammoth had a point to make, and it's made it with full prehistoric clarity. You regroup, back on the trail, but slower now. Quieter. The bravado has cooled into something closer to mutual respect. The mammoth lives. So do you. That feels somehow like a compromise between worlds. As the sun dips, you find a rise overlooking the landscape tundra forest, the faint path of crushed snow where the chase took place. A memory etched in ice. The shaman sits cross-legged on a stone, muttering again. He holds up your muddy charm, inspects it, and then adds a scratch to its surface with a sliver of flint. It now bears a line, a mark, a sign of the near trampling. You've earned it. In the fading light, someone starts humming, a soft, low tune that rolls like distant thunder. The rest join in. You do too. Today the mammoth won, but you're still walking. And in the Stone Age, that's enough. The sun is sinking now, slipping behind a jagged ridge of trees like a coin disappearing beneath a blanket. The sky blushes pink at the edges, then cools into a slate gray as shadows stretch across the snow. The air smells of pine and charcoal, and the faint, lingering scent of mammoth indignation. You're limping slightly, not from injury, exactly more, a collection of small betrayals by your feet, knees, and lower back. Everyone is walking slower now. Even the badger hat kid is quiet, his usual cheeky energy replaced by the calm of someone who's seen something large and angry make very clear life choices. No one speaks of the mammoth directly. There's no post-mortem, no tallying of throws or wounds, or what could we have done differently. It's as if the whole episode has been absorbed into the landscape. The mammoth came. It saw. It mildly chased you into emotional maturity. Now we go home. The trail bends toward a familiar rise. As you crest it, The valley below opens up. There's the camp, tucked between trees fire, already glowing, smoke curling upward, like an old friend waving. You didn't expect to feel it, but you do relief. Back in camp, the children come out first, excitedly pointing at the returning hunters. They laugh even before they see the mud on your face or the peculiar way you're walking, like a man who wrestled a tree and lost. A few of the women follow offering food water and warm stones wrapped in hide. These you clutch with more love than is probably reasonable. One of the elders helps you remove your boots, well boot, and squelchy sock, and replaces them with a pair of dry foot wraps that feel like hugging your toes with forgiveness. You make a sound that might be gratitude or just the wind finally escaping your lungs. Around the fire, the hunters settle in. The shaman throws a handful of something powdery into the flames, and they flare green for a moment, drawing a round of polite applause. Ritual or showmanship? Probably both. Now the boasting begins. It starts with the wiry hunter. He mimes the mammoth trunk, swinging tusks flaring, and then mimics himself, narrowly dodging a charge. There's a chorus of impressed oohs and one slow clap. Then the broad-shouldered man steps up. He pantomimes his spear throw, exaggerated by at least 2 full arm lengths. Everyone laughs, especially when he trips deliberately at the end. The Badger Hat Kid reenacts your spectacular log trip, twice, with flair. Even you're asked to contribute. You rise, wobble, and mime the moment you face the mammoth square on. You embellish, of course. You make your spear seem enormous. You pretend you didn't scream internally. You pause dramatically before drawing a perfect mammoth in the dirt with your toe complete with comically large eyes. They love it. Someone brings over a bowl of something hot and meaty. Possibly deer, possibly something less identifiable. You eat with both hands, warmth spreading from your fingers through your chest. A woman offers you a sliver of dried tuber sweet and earthy with a kick at the end. You nod. She smiles. Around the fire, furs are shared, shoulders pressed together. The hunters are close now, not just in body, but in story. You're part of it, not a visitor anymore. You have your bruise, your missed spear, your mud-caked honor. That's enough. Later, the shaman begins a low chant. Not urgent this time, more lullaby than invocation. He sings of animals and snow of stars watching from above. His words rise and fall like waves against a shore you didn't know you missed. You lean back, feet to the fire stars overhead. One twinkles brightly and winks out. A child curls beside you, fast asleep. Someone's dog, possibly a very large rat, with opinions curls against your hip. The hunt didn't go as planned, but the night is perfect, and you've survived. Which in the Stone Age is really all the ceremony you need. The fire crackles low, a soft punctuation against the hush of night. Embers wink lazily upward, drifting into the dark like tiny glowing insects on their own quiet pilgrimage to the stars. Around you, the camp breathes, not loudly, but in that rhythmic communal way of people whose bones know sleep before their minds do. The feast, if one could call it that, has settled into its final stage, gentle digestion and increasingly dramatic snoring. Someone nearby lets out a contented grunt mid-dream. Another sleepily rolls over and knocks over a bowl, which is neither noticed nor retrieved. It's a camp tradition now. Every evening ends with at least one overturned vessel and a mild sense of mystery in the morning. Your fur cloak is pulled close, though its smell is still. Let's say assertive. It's the kind of scent that stays with you for weeks, possibly years. Smoke old meat and mammoth daydreams. A cologne no modern boutique dares bottle. One of the hunters, the broad-shouldered one who once mimed his own near death with such gusto, is now humming to himself, a tune so slow and low, it feels more like breathing than song. Others join in, not all at once, but gradually, like mist creeping across a cold field. No words, just sound. A blanket of shared memory. The shaman, his face painted anew with ash and ochre, stands briefly to offer a final blessing. He does not chant, he does not drum. Instead, he scatters a few bones into the coals, whispering something only the fire hears. The flames shift, once flare blue, then settle back to orange. He nods, satisfied, and curls up with his charms rattling softly, like a sleepy tambourine. You lie back. The stars above are clear now, unchallenged by torch or lamp. So many of them, more than you're used to seeing, more than you can name. You feel very small, but not in a lonely way. Small like a stone in a river, nestled in something older than it can understand. The badger hat kid is already asleep next to you, one foot twitching occasionally in dream chase. You wonder if he's dreaming of mammoths, or rhinos, or possibly just more beetles to eat tomorrow. Your legs ache, your shoulders are sunken into earth, and your mind is drifting somewhere between memory and imagination. You remember the mammoth's eyes, not angry, not wild, just tired, wary. Perhaps it knew all along you weren't going to win. Perhaps it let you survive out of shared understanding. Historians still argue whether mammoths had complex emotions or if we've simply projected our own onto their bones. Tonight it doesn't matter. Tonight the mammoth was your teacher, and you, the reluctant student, passed the class by not getting flattened. The group settles into stillness. The fire dwindles to a low glow. The stars hum softly if you listen just right. The wind has gentled, the snow has stopped. The world is at peace. The fire is no more than a scatter of embers, now the light barely enough to shape shadows. You lie still beneath your fur body, heavy in the soft cradle of earth and moss. Your breath is slow, unhurried. Each inhale carries the faint scent of wood smoke and worn leather. Each exhale a little more of the day's weight. Around you the camp sleeps. Some snore, some murmur in dreams, but no one stirs. The rhythm of sleep is contagious. Even the night creatures seem to tiptoe respectful of the stillness that has settled like mist. The cold doesn't bite so much now. Not through the shared warmth, the shared story. The aches in your limbs are dulled, distant, almost forgotten. Your thoughts drift, looping lazily mammoths, spears, funny-shaped berries, a child with a badger hat who laughed at your drawings. The stars above wheel slowly, keeping their quiet watch, timeless, patient, soothing. If you listen closely, the earth itself hums beneath you, not with words, not with secrets, just presence, steady, kind. Your eyes grow heavier, each blink longer than the last. The tension has melted from your shoulders, your jaw, your fingers. You are safe, you are warm, and the mammoth still out there perhaps is walking its own path, far from firelight, into the hush of time. Sleep now. Tomorrow will wait.